we are continuing our discussion about capital projects and how some of the disasters that we've experienced over the years and the causes of those problems and disasters that we have witnessed. So the idea of these webinars is to help our customers be better at their craft, be better at what they do every day, to have more value. And as a result of having more value, that you increase your standings in your career, that you're able to earn more money, you're able to do more in your business and expand. So we really want to help pour into you so that you can grow in your career. It really is something we want to do. So that's why we do these webinars, is to help inform and bring you some value outside of just trying to sell you something. So we want to build relationships that work. That's what we do at CapEx. So this is part of a book that I wrote, a little booklet. And again, it's called Capital Disaster. And if you want a copy of it, please let us know. We would love to send that over to you. You can just email info@capexsales.com, or you can email russ@capexsales.com, or vicky@capexsales.com, or sales@capexsales.com, and we can send one of those over to you. Be glad to do that either electronically, or we could do that via the mail as well. It still works. So this is the only marketing or sales pitch that you're going to have through this entire webinar, which will be a 30-minute webinar. ATC Automation, we represent ATC Automation. We are based in the Carolinas. CapEx Sales, we're based in North Carolina, South Carolina. We also cover Virginia, is the territory that we are responsible for. We represent ATC Automation. They are out of Cookeville, Tennessee. 85% of their business is with repeat customers. And that matters in the automation industry, because there are plenty of companies out there that have been one and done and have, but that's not how ATC operates. Not that every project that we've been involved with has been amazing, but we always follow through. That strong follow through, that commitment to our customer success keeps our customers coming back time and time again. And that 85% of repeat business is a reflection of that. Cincinnati Test Systems, the largest leak test company in the world. Hard to believe, as I mentioned often, when I started working with them, I think they were around 3 to 4 million in annual sales. And since then, they've just blown up, grown, and just couldn't be prouder of them and their efforts, and just what a wonderful company they are to work with on a day-to-day basis. Duquesne Plastic Joining out of St. Charles, Illinois. They're a global and diversified plastic joining company. They are extremely diversified: vibration welding, hot plate welding, hot gas welding, laser welding, ultrasonic welding, any type of plastic joining. That is their world, and they are super good at it and build great equipment. Symetric is a division of Cincinnati Test Systems, but their focus is on high-speed in-process test and data management. So they are, like I mentioned, a division of Cincinnati Test, but they've got a different focus in think Industry 4.0 when you think Symetric. And then Keller Technologies, right here in Fort Mill, South Carolina. They have a comprehensive line of industrial filtration, hot and wet filtration, or dry and wet filtration. Okay, so the challenge here: have you ever been asked to execute a capital project and you weren't sure where to start? That's what we continue to talk about here. Project managers that succeed are not necessarily smarter, that they don't necessarily even have more experience. The project managers that thrive are masters at communicating. If you want to succeed in anything, in any career, having the ability to communicate and being willing to communicate, being willing to have difficult conversations is critical to your success, especially as a manufacturing or process engineer. So we want to communicate, we want to plan, and then make sure that we are executing. So we want to use tools to help us stay on track and keep us rolling. That's what the Capital Project Mastery Program is really all about. So let's take a look at some of the mistakes that we've seen over the course of time. As I mentioned, info@capexsales.com. We can send you one of these booklets. So bad decisions have consequences. Of course, we all know that. So the number one reason for capital disasters, number one, down, but hands down, the majority of the time is making poor vendor selections, making vendor selections based on criteria as I like the person, or I like the price, or they promise me a delivery in half the time of the other companies. So those are the traps that we get into as engineers in convincing ourselves that a supplier is the right supplier, regardless of that deep down feeling that, oh man, this probably isn't the right thing to do, but we move forward anyway. So we're going to talk some about what causes that and how to avoid it, how to avoid making poor vendor selection. That's what I really want to help you with here today. So the best strategy for making smart supplier decisions is to understand what you want in a supplier ahead of time. So you want to decide that, and then you want to have all of your subsequent conversations be a reflection on what it is that you decided to do. And we're going to talk a little bit about creating a supplier avatar and how to do that. So here are some of the steps. We've talked about this before, just continuing to reiterate this because repetition is the mother of learning, right? Assess your company's supplier situation. Has it been good? What has it been like in the past? Does your company have a strong relationship with a capable supplier that has already provided this type of product that you're going to need? If it's an automation supplier and you're putting together turbochargers, does this person have experience putting together, again, your products, throttle bodies, turbochargers, medical components? Do they have that, and do they have the references as well? We're going to talk a little bit about that. So these are the questions that you want to be asking as you are working to understand and create that avatar. So history helps build solutions. So are you doing lessons learned as a company? Are you identifying past mistakes so that you can avoid those mistakes moving into the future? So here are some of the general steps. The supplier. So we want to create a supplier avatar. Some of those questions that we just asked should help us to identify the types of characteristics that we want, the traits and characteristics of the ideal supplier for this project. So what experience is required? How should the supplier's values align with your company's values? What project management style do they use? Do they have a team-based work system? That's what ATC and Cincinnati Test Systems use as an example. They have teams that are capable of executing an entire project. Or are they a matrix organization where they have a project manager and a pool of resources that they say, okay, you're going to be a mechanical engineer for this project, you're going to be an electrical engineer for this project, you're going to be controls, and then they put that team together. But it's really not a team that's worked together on a day-to-day basis, so they don't know each other's strengths and weaknesses. So if that may be okay, that may be a fine way to supply, but what are your expectations of the vendor? That is really what matters, is what is important to you, and being intentional, premeditative in thinking about this supplier. So here's a sample of a list of traits and characteristics that you might look for. Strong track record of on-time delivery. How critical is the delivery for your application? Probably pretty important. Most of the time it is. So what is the track record of your supplier, of the suppliers that you are considering? Experienced with the products that you are manufacturing. So if you manufacture an XYZ product, has your vendor, do the potential vendors have experience with XYZ product? How important is that for you? What we're doing from an avatar, if you're not familiar with an avatar, it's something that we essentially build. We are building the ideal supplier for the application. And then everything in our decision making is going to be referring back to the vision that we had for that supplier and how well the potential supplier aligns with the traits and characteristics of the avatar that we created. So that is what we're trying to do here. It is proven scientifically that this is a strategy that works for helping us make better decisions. So are they experienced with the products? Are they experienced with the new technologies? Let's say you're going to do laser welding for the first time in your company's history. Does your supplier have experience in laser welding? Can they share that experience with you? Are they experts in that new technology, and will they be able to help you avoid the traps of new technology at your company, right? So there's risk in new technology and in those processes. So you want to make sure that you are choosing a supplier that ideally has that understanding and expertise so that you can avoid and take their lessons learned moving forward. So proximity to your facility, is it important that the potential supplier is within driving distance because you don't want to fly? Maybe there's a pandemic going on and you don't want to get on an airplane. Determining that is really important. Provide local, do they provide local support? How important is that for your organization? Has a strong service group and service strategy. You know, some companies have great equipment build capabilities, but they don't have field service expertise. Maybe that's important to you. Maybe it's not. Depends on how strong your maintenance people are. To that, are they ISO, QS, TS? What are the qualifications or requirements for your facility or for this application? It's going to help you maintain your certification internally. Is that important? Maybe it's not, but the key is to ask yourself those questions. So another step in this process, create a supplier selection matrix. Again, I know we've talked about this multiple times, but it's important. So many companies don't have the discipline to use a supplier selection matrix. And as a result, they choose the wrong supplier and they crash and burn and struggle after they do it. So some companies, like I mentioned, are very elaborate. Others have a simple ranking system. You will want to evolve your system over the course of time based on the lessons that you learn along the way. And that's important that you are evaluating those lessons learned so you understand what is going to be important for your success moving forward. Some items that typically show up on these: experience with the product and processes similar to ours, ranking 1 to 10, price 1 to 10, lead time 1 to 10, floor space 1 to 10, compliance with RFQ. So you're going to have to rank each of these as well. How important is compliance with the RFQ to the selection process? How important is the concept viability, the technical aspects that the supplier is promoting or trying to sell to you? How important is that? So you're going to want to rank these. How important is terms, service experience, things such as that. So these are all going to be items that are in your matrix, and you want to understand and prioritize them, and then give them appropriate weight. So that, because if price is third important, and you've got a vendor that's a higher price than all the other vendors, based on that could potentially knock them out. But they have experience with the product, they have a good floor space usage, they've got a good lead time, everything else is aligning, but the price isn't. Well, you want to maybe delve into that. But if you have appropriate weighting system, it's going to make all that balance out. Next step, identify potential suppliers and then invite them to interview. Really important that you interview potential suppliers, not just send them an RFQ. So have them in your facility, make sure the visit's no more than 2 hours, and that should be enough time for you to tour them around and provide them with a presentation about what your goals are. Help them understand some of the specifics that you're looking for in a supplier, and allow them to come back and provide feedback on that from their perspective. Of course, their feedback is going to be, oh yeah, we do that. And your role, your responsibility is going to be confirming that what they say is actually true. Remember, they want to sell you something. So, and selling isn't a bad thing. It's what I've done my entire career, except for my short stint for about 5 years as an engineer. But we want to be aware and cognizant of what the supplier is attempting to do, which is sell a product. So from the beginning of the supplier engagement, we talked about this during the last conversation, is you want to assess the supplier. What is their level of responsiveness? Are they showing interest? Are they engaging in your application? Are they excited about it? Can you sense that they're just as excited about this potential application as you are? Understand that. That's a feeling that you get. And if you've got a company, give an example. So we had we decided we were going to build a pool, and we contacted 4 pool suppliers, and they all came to our house and talked through the scenarios, and then each provided pricing. Well, one company who had built multiple pools on our street, they were very kind of laid back, not super responsive. They almost acted as though they had the business wrapped up, and they didn't pursue us. And so as a result of that, we knew that their work was good. We had seen that. They were a higher priced company than any of the other companies. But again, so our neighbors were saying, yeah, it was a wonderful experience. It was excellent. I'm looking at it from a consumer perspective, and I'm saying, well, they kind of act like they don't care, and they have a higher price than everyone else. So I booted them out for that, because it didn't feel like they were in pursuit of my business. During the supplier visit to your facility, again, you want to get a feel for their experience in building the type of equipment required for your application, and then identify the references. Important. You got to get references, and then use your selection matrix. So pull that up while they're in the facility. Have one of your team members pull it up and go through some questions and begin to populate your decision matrix during that initial meeting, again, to see how they stack up versus your avatar. You want to capture that information, because if you don't, you're going to lose it. Again, continuing on the steps of selecting the right supplier. And I know this seems over the top, but the reality is, if you're going to spend a couple $1,000,000, you better be over the top. If you're going to spend $500,000, you better be over the top. It is critically important for your satisfaction, your sanity moving forward, that you choose the right supplier. And choosing the right supplier starts from the beginning of the process to the end of the process in that selection, and being very intentional along the way. So you want to narrow the list down to 3 suppliers, no more than 3. I've seen companies have 5, 6, 7, 8 suppliers that they invite. That is crazy, because you're the person that's going to have to answer the questions, supply the information. It's a lot more work. But if you do your work up front, maybe invite 7 companies in to have a conversation, but then choose 3 companies that are most closely aligned with your avatar and move forward with them. Don't try to go forward with 7 suppliers as an option. You want to make sure you check their references as soon as possible. You don't want to get down the road and then check their references. Do that as soon as possible. Of course, most references are like, oh yeah, they're great, they're amazing, because that's who everyone sends references for, are their successes. So be aware of that, but focus on asking the right questions that can help you get a feel for what were they like when things didn't go wrong. How did they manage through project changes? How did they manage through the debug process when things weren't working right? Were they on time in delivering the equipment? If you could change one thing about your experience with that supplier, what would it be? So you're really trying to uncover the underlying potential challenges associated with working with the supplier. And then schedule the RFQ for reviews after that. You want to assess the potential suppliers versus the criteria you've identified. That's the avatar comparison I mentioned. The intangibles are important to assess and utilize. So here's an example of that. If a company is super responsive, professional, and attentive to your needs, you might consider them even if some of the tangible attributes aren't a match. So sometimes there is a level of intuition that you'll want to not ignore when it comes to a potential supplier. But again, be smart, because and use your intuition, but avoid relying on either to be the be all end all. So just don't use the matrix as the be all end all, and don't use your intuition as the be all end all. You want to have a combination of the two to help ensure that you make the best decision for your company. And because here's the reason why. If you use the matrix and the matrix identifies a company that is full of people that you don't like, it's going to be a crappy experience. And you're going to have to live with these, depending on how long the project, you're going to have to work with them for 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, a year. So you want to make sure that you're dealing with people that you will enjoy working with over the long haul. It's not everything, but it is something, and it's important. So hold suppliers accountable during the quoting process. Oftentimes, so be very intentional. Look for authenticity. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So make sure that you're checking up, following up. Integrity matters. Are they telling you the truth? Are they sharing it, the reality of the situation with you? If you provided a detailed RFQ, did the quote? There's a company that I compete with fairly often on the automation side, and there'll be an RFQ from the customer, and it'll be a very detailed RFQ. And the quote comes back from this supplier, it's like 6 pages long, 6 or 7 pages long. And in our quote comes back, it's 20 to 30 pages long, and explains all the details, everything, all the commitments that we're going to make as a supplier to the customer. And I've oftentimes, my customers like, what gives? There's no detail in this 6-page quotation. So if you are detailed and vigilant, the expectation should be that your supplier is going to be detailed and vigilant as well. It's critical. Otherwise, there's lots of loopholes in a quote that doesn't clearly define exactly what the supplier is going to deliver. It is important to allow the suppliers to suggest alternatives to your specification. Remember, they are the subject matter experts. So allow them. Don't be so locked. I mentioned this last week as well. Don't be locked in on your specification that you're unwilling to hear ideas. Because if you choose suppliers that have experience in the technologies and the products that you're trying to put together, they'll have some ideas. They'll have the experience. That's what you want to tap into. That's why you are selecting those suppliers. So leverage their experience. You don't know everything. You are a subject matter expert for your product, but you're not a subject matter expert for every aspect of putting together your product, because your experience is narrow. Their experience is broad. So again, just be open and don't get yourself so locked in that you are unable to see and receive potential ideas that can help you build a better product. Here's some general steps. Again, choosing the right supplier. So use the supplier matrix. Common sense is not always common practice. This is really kind of the last step here, right? So balance between matrix and desire. We already talked about that. Appropriately matched suppliers will have comparative pricing. Again, if you got the right companies that are quoting this product, they'll be within range of each other. That's just how it works. Been doing this for 20 years. It always falls into a certain range, maybe 10% or so, maybe 12, 15%. But in general, the pricing is going to be comparative. Don't be a price buyer. We already talked about that. That is the number one recipe for disaster. Price and delivery. If they tell you they can deliver it in half the time of everybody else, they are lying. If they quote it at half the price of everybody else, they are suckering you in. They're going to need to have changes, and they likely don't have a good comprehension as it relates to the product that you need to be putting together. So now let's talk about the ticking time bomb. So why are capital projects always behind? This is the ticking time bomb. Remember, as a project manager, our responsibility is to manage risk. And the 2 areas of risk for your project, and this is really what affects your return on investment. That's why companies make an investment in capital, is because they want a return on investment. 2 things that will affect that. Number 1 is budget overrun. If your budget goes over, you're going to affect the opportunity cost or the return on investment. And then number 2, you're going to affect the other thing that is important is that you manage the delivery. If it's late, then you're going to impact the return on investment as well. So those are the 2 things that you want to focus in on when you are in the project management mode. Is what's going to cause a risk to my funding? Am I going to go over my budget? And number 2 is what's going to affect the timing, the delivery of this product. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about here in this section. So if you are being asked by management to execute a project that you know is impossible, don't agree to it. Don't agree to it. Don't agree to it, because your reputation is going to be on the line. Or if you do have to get agreed to it, if you're forced into it, make sure that everyone is aware, not by whining or complaining, but just by sharing the barriers to success for this project. So it's important that you lay that out there and you make sure that everyone on the executive team, everyone that you are accountable to, understand the challenges associated with the project. Top 2 reasons that projects are late: delayed management, funding, approval is huge. See that all the time. Companies win a new program, but their management, which only meets once per month, has to approve the $4 million project, and they missed the window in May, they missed the window in June, or they didn't have things, or they hit the window in June and management had questions, and then July, so they were supposed to have approval in May, but they missed it, and then June got kicked down the road, and now they're in July and they finally get approval, and then of course you're a couple weeks out by the time you write it. So that is a very common problem. It results in a compressed timeline. So your equipment is supposed to be delivered in March of next year. All the suppliers are saying it's going to be a 40-week delivery, but again, you don't get the project kicked off at least 40 weeks prior to when the equipment needs to be delivered. That is going to compress the timeline. It creates tons of unnecessary stress. And here's the problem. If you are in management, at a manufacturing company, and you are kicking the can down the road, if you're not responding, if you're not approving funding for your projects, then it's on you. The lack of success is really on you, because you're creating chaos in your organization when you try to compress a timeline by not approving the funds necessary. If it's a new program and you know it's going to have to happen, why in the world would you put constraints or delay funding for a program that you know is going to happen? So as a capital project manager, you want to make sure you use that executive summary. We've talked about how to use that, what that's all about, but that is a report that helps, just a condensed report to share with management to help them understand what the status of the project is. Again, the management of your company has a fiduciary responsibility to maximize the return on the company's money. So you want to keep them informed as to what's going to impact the return on the company's money, because at the end of the day, that is how your management is going to be judged. So, but if you keep these problems in front of them through the executive summary, you're going to help yourself. That's the whole idea there. You can provide partial POs. It's not ideal, but if this is an option, I would encourage you to go there so that companies can maybe start the engineering process. But you've got to kick your suppliers off in a timely manner in order for you to have success, for you to avoid the chaos, avoid debugging equipment on your floor, avoid not having the parts that you need in order to properly debug and run the equipment off. So you must get suppliers started in a more timely basis as far as funding goes. And I realize sometimes, and most of the time, that's out of your hands, because all you're doing is submitting a request for funding and relying on other people to do that approval for you. So push as hard as you can. The second biggest problem, the ticking time bomb that I've experienced, are design changes. If the design is in flux, there's no reason to proceed with the project without some barriers, right? So you want to put some barriers up to not continue if the product design is not frozen, specifically around areas of the product. So in other words, if this pen they're working on the top, they might redesign the plunger here, then all this work should be fine. And what you're going to do is avoid design of equipment around that plunger. So, but there's going to be a time when that's no longer going to be effective, and it's going to affect two things. It's going to cost you more money because of the delays or maybe design that you have to go back and change. And then the second is it's going to cost you on timing, because the delay in getting the design complete is going to delay the equipment being put together and produced. So get involved in all aspects of the product design review process. Stay engaged, know where it is, understand that's another role that you play as a manufacturing engineer. You want to stay on top of the product design status. When there's a product build at your R&D center, go there, participate, be a part of it. Very important that you do that so you understand the technical aspects and the functionality of the product. What are the concerns? What are the new processes that you haven't done in your facility in the past? And what do you need to do to learn them and help teach your maintenance people, operations people internally so that it isn't a surprise and it isn't the first time that they see it when it arrives to your facility. So you need to know everything possible about that product and about the application. Understanding this will help prevent surprises and will allow you to make what is you. So when you know the functionality, when you know the critical aspects of the product, you'll know what is important from a risk perspective and what you need to really manage and focus accordingly. So the top reasons, again, vendor resource constraints. So the vendor executing the project could have constraints as far as resources because maybe they made too many commitments and they have limited resources to execute on those commitments. You want to dig deep. You want to understand that. If you have an honest relationship with your vendors, they will let you know that. They will be upfront with you in communication to say, here's the challenge that we've got as it relates to success on your project. We've got a mechanical engineering constraint issue. We've got a controls issue. We've got a data person issue. So ask the potential vendors about the resources that are to be assigned and ideally meet them. You know, who are the mechanical engineers? Who are the controls engineers? Who are the builders that are going to be building your product or building your equipment? So run through different scenarios of them being awarded another large project at the same time. So as I mentioned, you know, that's the resource constraint. That's where the constraints most often come in. Make sure to check those references on timing. Ask the questions that we talked about earlier. Don't be shy. This is where I see some companies, especially engineers. So we're not forward. We're not pushy. We're not gonna get up in somebody's grill about a potential challenge. But you want to push your vendors. You want to really understand and have them provide you and build your confidence in their ability to execute the project. So don't worry, don't be shy in pushing your vendors to help ensure your level of confidence. Purchase component delivery, huge issue, right? If you are not going to specify the difficult or to procure, you've got to make sure that your purchasing people are buying the components necessary. You can have the greatest equipment in the world. If you don't have anything to run it off with, then you're going to be screwed long-term because you have to run the equipment off properly. You have to debug it properly. You got to run it off properly, and then you need to have it prepared for your facility. If you don't have components, that is going to be a problem. So you want to have contingencies as well. If products aren't showing up, what are the other options for that? Are you going to have to disassemble, reassemble? What are you going to do to ensure that you've got something to debug the equipment? Have purchasing drop ship the components to the equipment supplier if necessary. So this is a huge problem, especially in the automotive world, is that projects get kicked off. Of course, they get kicked off late. So the suppliers that are supplying all of the components that are going to go into the final assembly, they don't get kicked off until the same time the assembly supplier gets kicked off. So they're not ready to produce product, and those initial products are very expensive. So purchasing doesn't want to spend $1 million on parts for you to use for debug. But the reality is that is $1 million saved at the end of the day because of the headache, chaos, troubleshooting, babysitting that happens when we don't make those products available for that debug process. No parts for debug runoff, as we'll talk about here. So number one reason for poor performing equipment after production starts is this. Part quantity needs to be in the executive summary. We got to be harping from the very beginning. We need these products. We need these products. We need these products. You got to be on purchasing. You want to encourage purchasing to have the parts, tell them you need them, elevate it. Make sure that everyone in your organization, especially the executives, understand the importance of having the products for debug. So be creative and work with others to develop a plan. Fight the battle for others, no matter what. So you need these products. You need these parts to be successful. Go fight the fight to get them. Okay, in summary, the path of least resistance for supplier selection results in disasters. Really, that's really what it is. So late projects and cost overruns, which are the two things that us as project managers, manufacturing engineers are responsible for managing through. You choose the wrong supplier, you're doomed as it relates to that, because you're going to have to babysit and you don't control the resources. The best strategy for minimizing risk to your company is being very intentional in that selection process. Work the process. Don't circumvent the process. Don't skip steps. Just work the process, and you will be much more likely to be successful in your supplier selection efforts. Don't agree to manage a project destined for failure from the beginning. You're going to know it. You can look at it. You can intuitively understand, wow, this is a recipe for disaster. And if you are forced to take on this project, make sure that you are communicating and everyone else understands what is going on with the project. Capital project managers must communicate internally and externally relentlessly to succeed. That's your number one responsibility. Communicate, 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 plan, manage, use the tools that are available to you with timelines, open issues lists to help ensure your success as a project manager. All right, that's what we got. December 16th, we are going to wrap up our conversation on managing our capital disasters. So again, if you want a copy of the capital disaster booklet, just let us know. And what topics would you like to hear or like for us to cover? We are here for you. We want to make sure that we're communicating with you and helping you, again, grow in your career and help improve your value to your organization. So we really appreciate the opportunity to serve you. We appreciate your business. We are truly grateful for it. So thank you for that business. Again, we got Mike Dorsey down in South Carolina, Chris Mullins in Eastern North Carolina and Virginia. And then yours truly is focused on Western North Carolina. And then I have select upstate South Carolina accounts. Appreciate each and every one of you. Have an amazing day.